Welcome to today's Fireside Chat. What we are talking about today is the world at large. What's happening in the world at large? What's the impact to us from the perspective of our willingness, desire, passion to want to throw money at a property? We're talking about investing in uncertain environments. So let's you and I go into some concerns we feel may exist in the broader market. War in Iran is causing a flow-on effect in prices on oil. Today, they've released a whole pile of oil in order to stop a run of price against oil, knowing full well that every dollar added to the price of a barrel is a cent added to our bowser in Australia. Some bright spark came up with that relationship. I think it's close enough. If it goes up $40 a barrel, it goes up 40 cents in Australia. So that's kind of the nature of the relationship. So, okay, well, so what? We have to pay a few extra cents to fill our cars up. And sure, you might have to do that for a little while. But the dilemma you face, of course, is the flow-on effect. If trucks need to add 40 cents a litre to their petrol, to their fuel, then distribution companies' costs have gone up by 40 cents a litre, which is a significant impost on the expenses of running a distribution company, and therefore those costs get passed on to their clients, who are the people who are shipping stuff around the country to sell to us. Consequently, we end up in a place where we are forced to pay more for stuff that we have otherwise paid a regular price for, a price we're comfortable with, or a price we're familiar with. So prices go up. Again, supply side pressure on inflation. Now, Simon, you've made a couple of declarations around it is a hard thing for the RBA to manage supply side price pressure with a demand side tool. I agree. Talk to me. What are you seeing around the country right now?
The things that are keeping investors up at night and that are keeping the Reserve Bank members up at night at the moment, I think, as well, are this whole issue that if you've got an oil shock, as you just, I think, put very well, Brendan, you see that whole flow through potentially into the economy, into other goods and services, and prices go up, inflation goes up. And what's the Reserve Bank's mandate? It's to try and keep inflation down within a 2 to 3% band. Good luck doing that for the coming months on the basis of what's happening. So their tool in terms of interest rates is, if I make money more expensive, people will borrow less. Therefore, there's less money circulating around the economy. People buy less. It takes heat out of demand. And if there's less demand at an equivalent level of supply, then companies will tend to price their goods and services lower, or if not lower, they will stop putting them up as much in order to remain competitive. So they're trying to balance supply and demand, but really their lever is on the demand side, not the supply side. So try to bring down demand to offset the pressure on supply. The issue that you've got here, especially with something so fundamental as oil and fuel, is that if you've got a real limitation on that supply of something that's really kind of essential right across the economy, how far can you go with suppressing demand to try and offset prices without causing real harm to the economy, causing businesses to start to think about their hiring decisions, about laying people off, to really damage economic growth because there's no business investment happening because they're not getting enough turnover and all these sorts of things. So it's a really tough equation to manage.
Well, no, the only outcome is to cut costs.
Yeah.
If costs have gone up and I need to raise prices to preserve profits in order to live the lifestyle I'm accustomed to, let's say. And then you've got a scenario where the RBA puts pressure on demand to say, well, no, don't buy stuff right now. Don't buy the good stuff, buy the cheap stuff. Cut back on your expectations, tighten the belt. Business owners are obligated to go, well, I've got to cut costs somewhere. Guess what? The only other area in business you can really cut, other than profit margins, is staff, is labor. The longer term impact here is unemployment. You think about the flow-on effect. War, no oil, price goes up, price goes up, therefore, in the shops for stock that people buy, which forces inflation, even though it's not a demand-driven issue. Increase interest rates, so I've got to pay more for the stuff because of it costs more, and I don't have as much money to do so. So I've got to cut back on what I buy. So I've got to live a more conservative existence. Living a more conservative existence is a deflationary impact on the value of a business. Not only does it cost me more, I'm getting less. The only outcome is cut staff.
Yeah.
So we are driven down the path of greater unemployment. We're driven down the path of more people out of work. It's almost recessionary.
That's a genuine risk. Even though the most recent growth stats were quite positive overall for Australia, although not really driven by the private sector, the issue moving forwards is that gets reversed as a result of this. Exactly what you're saying, Brendan, that businesses rein in, growth reins in, unemployment goes up. And what's the Reserve Bank's dual mandate? It's not just about keeping inflation in check, it's about maintaining this concept of full employment. So
yeah, it's not possible though.
It's not. So you've got a real contradiction there. If you're going to drive up interest rates, and the downstream potential consequence of that is damage to growth and damage to jobs. So where do you try and strike the balance? And I think there's a debate to be had here. I mean, I know we've got a Reserve Bank meeting coming up in a few days, early next week, where they'll be making a decision on interest rates. And there's a lot of speculation about this being a live meeting in terms of the financial markets, at least pricing in around about a 2/3 chance of a rate rise. The debate I think that'll be going on is, well, hang on a sec. What is the downside risk to growth and to jobs if we put up interest rates? How effective in containing inflation would putting up interest rates really be when you've got this kind of somewhat unprecedented supply side shock on oil, and a whole lot of uncertainty about what's happening or what's going to happen in terms of how long this will go for, in terms of the actions that various countries around the world are taking to release their reserves of oil to try and keep things a little bit in balance. There's a whole lot of question marks there that you've got to weigh up in that equation. But I'd also argue, Brendan, that if you've got higher petrol prices, and that's basically something that's essential, so people are going to have to spend more at the pump, and that flows through into other goods and services. So particularly with essentials like grocery items, they're probably going to have to spend more because the distribution costs, as you said, are higher. If I have to already spend more, and I'm expecting to have to spend more on those things, I'm already reining in my expenditure on other stuff. And that's going to affect my plans in terms of what I might have otherwise spent on discretionary items. So in a way, the higher petrol prices, which are kind of unavoidable at the moment, I'd be asking, well, is that enough to cause consumers to actually rein in their demand in a similar way to an interest rate increase would have anyway? And if you pile on an interest rate increase on top of that, is the downside risk to the economy becoming too great?
I hear your words. The dilemma you face is the timing and the statistics. I fully understand where you're coming from, yeah? And there's validity in the statement unto itself. Higher petrol prices are going to cause people to rein in expenses, and therefore, by default, demand side impact will be a reduction in burn to want to buy stuff. Agreed. But the dilemma you face is the reporting period. We know prices are coming up. It'll take a while for fuel. It'll take a while for that to flow into prices for goods and services. It'll take a while for people to then buy less. It'll take a while for that statistic to come through before the RBA has it to make a judgment call on whether it unto itself is a mechanism for reducing demand. And the dilemma you face is by the time they've come to that point, they've had to have made a couple of decisions about interest rate rises anyway, and therefore by default, they are forcing a restriction on top of a restriction that has the impact more rapidly than that otherwise intended.
There's the risk that then there's an oh crap, we've pumped the brakes too hard, and now we've got a harder uphill battle to try and get things back alive again, back to where they need to be to recover from the oil shock. So it's a real tough one, and I think they're gonna struggle a little bit in Tuesday's decision.
But I don't think they've got the patience. I don't think that the public demand or the government pressure around the 2 to 3% mandate is going to allow, particularly if we're above 3 at the moment, is going to allow them the latitude to have patience. And I think that they will be forced into a position of pulling the trigger on raising rates.
I think, and I think that's the risk. If there's an adherence to, dare I say it, dogma as opposed to common sense, then I think there's a heightened risk, and the money markets probably are acknowledging this at the moment, that they do jack up rates on Tuesday. Do I think that that's the right thing to do? I think there's a strong common sense argument that no, it's not.
Oh, breathe, calm.
Yeah, no, but I'm on my soapbox, and it's a fireside chat, so I'm allowed to be.
No. I'm talking about RBA. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. I'm saying if the RBA takes a moment just to breathe and relax.
Exactly. And so I think there's a strong and compelling argument to leave things on hold at the moment. Rates aren't super low right now, so there's room to maneuver them down if this actually does start to translate into lower unemployment. You don't need to jack them up to then be able to drop them later. I don't think jacking them up right now is going to be an effective tool, just from a pure common sense and basic economics point of view. I think dare I say it, the right decision on Tuesday would be actually to do nothing.
I reckon you and I, Simon,
has the Reserve Bank done what we've considered to be the right decision consistently? No. So
I reckon we need to run to be board members, mate.
Maybe.
I reckon we need to put ourselves out there and say,
open up in the not too distant.
Let us run the country. We got a clue.
That's all right. So there's that. So I mean, coming back to this core of today's conversation, investing in an uncertain environment. There's a whole bunch of uncertainty there around what's happening with inflation, what's going to happen with this war, how long it's going to drag out for, what's going to happen with interest rates. A whole pile of uncertainty. But there are other things. It's not just that. There's concerns that people have got, and with all the rumors circulating around what might happen with some of the tax settings like CGT discounting.
Oh, of course.
Are we going to be limited to negative gearing on just a couple of properties, or are they going to do something different around there, or nothing when the May budget rolls around? Obviously, what's going on with the conflict and the cost of oil and all of that, and the cost of living is going to factor into decisions around how that budget operates as well. And there's a little bit more elusive, but bubbling away beneath the surface there is a growing concern that's starting to surface around people's worries about their jobs and what their jobs are going to look like in 5 years or so because of the rise of AI and how big a part of the workforce that may become, or how big an influence that's going to have on productivity and how many workers of certain types you need and the skills those workers need to have. So there's a whole lot of anxieties bubbling away beneath the surface at the moment. And I think that can feel overwhelming. And as investors, if you start to feel overwhelmed, if you're caught up in the uncertainty, you kind of have the temptation is to do nothing, not as a conscious decision, but I don't know what to do, therefore I'm doing nothing. The issue with that is that, uncertainty, doing nothing is not a strategy, not when it's not a conscious, deliberate decision. So
by the same token, ready, fire, aim is not the approach either.
Random investing or random response or panic response is clearly not the answer. So the way I would look at this, there's a couple of levels to this. One is that times of uncertainty like this are precisely the reason why you're investing. Right? You come back to, what are your goals? What are you investing for? You're investing to create wealth for yourself, security for yourself, less reliance on your job or your business, for instance. That's what you're doing it all for. And these sorts of times of uncertainty are precisely why you need to be focused on that. And it precisely why doing nothing or panicking or freezing in this sort of circumstance is the wrong thing to do. There was a comment in the chat. It was Kyle saying it's feeling a little bit like 2022, but with
a hint of war, meaning interest rates going up with war in the background this time, just as a sort, just add spice to the problem.
It's not a virus, it's a war this time around, and it does have that a little bit of sense of that. And I kind of want to chat a little bit about that as well, though, in that if you think back to what happened in the pandemic, and particularly like our results members who were in the program, and we were looking at what was happening in the market and forecasting how the market was going to change and shift, there were huge opportunities during the pandemic for investors who were savvy, who were smart, and who were not paralyzed by indecision. And people who bought effectively in the dip back then, because they could see the turn coming, and we were showing that in our forecasts, made squillions. They made a hell of a lot of profit by acting when other people wouldn't. When other people were frozen by indecision, they went in, found the good opportunities, acquired those, actioned those, and made some very, very good profits. Got a real jump ahead. I think, in terms of how we should be approaching this sort of uncertainty, my view is that you want to be looking for the opportunity in this, not getting caught up in the noise and the hype, but focusing on, all right, where's the opportunity? Are other investors going to sit out on the sidelines? Is this a good opportunity for me to go in and cherry pick good opportunities, really get myself in a position to take advantage and get ahead whilst other people sit on the sidelines? And I think there's every possibility of those opportunities starting to emerge over the coming weeks and months.
As with every ripple in the space-time continuum. There is always opportunity. There's the force. There is always opportunity. And yeah, it's being able to recognize, prepare yourself, and B, recognize what the possibilities are here. So to fall asleep or to crawl up into the fetal position, stick your thumb in the mouth and grab blankie and rock backwards and forwards is not going to be the way to be able to achieve or to be certain of what it is that you want to do, or to make inroads into what you want to achieve. So the invitation, of course, then is to not do that. What is it that you need to do differently to be prepared? What is it that you need to do to go on the premise that an opportunity is likely to arise in the not too distant future? What do I need to have done to have, or to be ready to take advantage of it? What cash do I need to have available? What borrowing capacity what can I free up to be able to do that? Do I have anything right now that is vulnerable under these circumstances for a loss of value? And how might I mitigate that or manage that to give myself access to opportunities that may be pending? These are active considerations. These are not passive sit and watch by the sidelines and ask what happened later. These are the active, what can I do to secure my position now and secure my position ongoing to support me achieving what I want to achieve. Brilliant. Simon, with a minute left, final thoughts.
As you said, Brendan, you got to be looking for the opportunities, but bring it back to help keep things in perspective. Bring it back to your goals. What am I investing for? What am I trying to achieve? Doing nothing probably isn't going to help me achieve that. So how do I keep moving on that? How do I keep that in focus? What do I do? We're going to be running an online workshop Saturday week, precisely designed to help you build your financial freedom plan. And really, I think that's in sharp focus at the moment because of these uncertainties. These uncertainties are the reasons why you want to have your own financial freedom plan and to be making real inroads on that. So make sure you check out the upcoming event space for that event. It was just posted up today. Go and RSVP for that. And it's at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday, 21st of March. And Brendan and I will be on that, and we'll be going through a framework to help you create that financial freedom plan for yourself and to help you cut through a lot of this noise and stay focused on what's going to work for you, what's going to help you achieve those financial goals. So head on over to the upcoming event space straight after this and go and make sure you book yourself in for that event. That's going to be awesome. Finally, for me as well, great to see a bunch of new members again in the community. If you are new, welcome. Great to have you on board. And just a couple of tips to get you started. Make sure that you filled out your profile with a picture, a mini bio about yourself. Answer those questions that are in your profile page. And that basically will help you make connections with other people in the community and build those valuable connections within your network, those contacts that are going to help you move forwards as well. Find like-minded investors in the community. Do answer the icebreaker question. That's a great way to introduce yourself to the community as well. So make sure you complete working through that welcome checklist. And do check out the upcoming event space. As we said, we've got the workshop coming up. We have our weekly fireside chats and more in there. Make sure you RSVP for those events and jump into the replays as well, where you'll find a whole pile of valuable resources from sessions like this that we've already done and other webinars and the like as well. But welcome aboard.
Guys, until we meet again, invest wisely. See you next week.
Next Thursday.